Hi, I'm Kat.
I'm Charlie.
And I'm Lou. We're here for the Paria Collective, and today we are talking about play in the context of creativity.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Obviously, we are all music therapists. We are not play therapists, but play is something that we found ourselves talking about more than usual, I think. So we thought it would be a good thing to chat about.
Yeah.
With the cameras.
I think it's like also specifically because we all work with adolescents, young people. I think that's why it sort of came up maybe more surprisingly than if we were working with little ones.
Yeah, yeah. Because I guess when you say play, you think of little kids running around and role play.
Yeah, what is play?
I'm so glad you asked. I have had a little browse of the internet, and I think like some of the common themes of play are that it's like a self-directed activity that is just done as an end in itself. It's not unto anything specific. It's not got any like aims or objectives. It's just something that you do because you wanted to do it. I'm sure there are some more complex or clever ways of saying it, but I think like that's maybe the baseline for us to work from.
Yeah,
sounds good.
So, I mean, do we need to talk about why it's important?
Probably.
Yeah. I guess you learn through play, don't you? When you're, as a small child, that is how you sort of, just sort of watching my niece do her thing as a 5-year-old. It's like almost like she processes what's going on around her through play sometimes. Like you can see her acting out things that she's seen or heard, or like playing mummies and daddies with bears and things, or babies, dolls and things. It feels like very much like it's learning and it's fun and it's imaginative. But I think that's why it's important, is that it's the way that lots of people learn about the world or process what's going on around them, and also interacting with other children. That's a huge one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think also how you mentioned play is often fun is like a crux of why play is important for us to do, because it feels nice and it feels fun and it feels like it's a good thing for us, good for our mental health as well.
I think fun is underrated.
I love having fun.
Yeah.
I think that should be like the strapline of this conversation.
Fun is underrated.
Yeah. But I think that makes sense, and it's a weird thing to talk about because nobody goes into play thinking about all of the like developmental advantages of play.
Like a 3-year-old.
Yeah, or even like as a parent, when I'm watching my kids play, I'm not sat there thinking, oh, this is doing wonders for their cognitive and social development. I just think, oh, it's my turn to be a T-Rex now. Like I'm not thinking about that, and so it's a bit of a strange thing to have commentary about. And I guess that's, in some ways, I sometimes feel that way about creativity. Like I sometimes feel that way about music making, because what we do is fundamentally making music with people, and then sometimes we unpack it, and it's right that we do because it's our job to. But it's a funny thing when something is so natural that we then have to talk about it, and it's helpful to talk about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that it is often that child parent, like that's the most I feel that adults play is with children, or that it comes naturally to them, and that it's not in like, oh, we're going to play a game now, it's like you see a child, like I have a niece who's 8 months old, and my natural response is to just be playful.
Yeah.
And that's how everyone speaks around her, and how everyone engages with her is like constantly play, like hidey peekaboo. It's just like, that's just what you do. And it's just interesting, isn't it, that it's feels most natural and normal when it's with younger children, but at what point does that stop and change? And why do we stop being more playful as children get older, both children themselves and also how people engage with them?
That's a really good point, because in thinking about this, and the reason we've ended up talking about it is working with teenagers. You start thinking, oh, okay, the way, what does play look like when you're 15? And I'm like, you saying that has made me think, like, when does that happen? It's not like you just wake up one day and think, yeah, I'm not gonna do that anymore. It must be a gradual thing, because otherwise we would notice it happening.
Yeah.
But we are saying that it's still really important. It just, the opportunities for it maybe reduce, or maybe our awarenesses of how we're perceived, and like we become more self-conscious.
I think that's
like life becomes more pressured, and so we don't engage in that in the same way. And I think probably across the board we are seeing that with the teenagers that we work with. Like, one of the things that I was gonna say is, like, we're talking about how natural it is, and I think that is true unless something interrupts your life course. Like, unless that gets something gets thrown into that mix that then makes play unsafe. Because I think, like, everything that we've described so far about play is it being this kind of like free state where you can express yourself and you're not worried about judgment. You're not like, and you are having to navigate social relationships inside of it, but it's you're not trying to achieve anything. And so then if that becomes complex and you don't feel safe, it then becomes very difficult. And I think that's what we're all seeing a lot in our work at the moment, is this it being really hard to get into a state of play, whatever that means.
There were like a couple of things that came to mind as you were speaking, Lou, of like, you know, how what play looks like changes as we get older. And maybe, you know, there'll be play therapists out there who know this, and, you know, so I'm not pretending I'm an expert, but that I imagine play as a teenager does look really different to play as a under 10-year-old. And what I think, bringing it back to like kind of my experience as a music therapist, what I think I experience when I feel like I'm in like a play state with someone is that perhaps more unstructured, freer, under 10 sort of level of play when I'm working with adolescents. And that seems to be really valuable, because my experience of them in those states is really different to my experience of them outside of a session or in a different way of music making. I.e., you know, someone I worked with around the setting I was in would be really, he'd come across as really serious and kind of always frowning, and like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he hadn't gone through, to my knowledge, any like big sort of life course changing event or anything, but just seemed to have the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I remember really vividly this one improvisation, well, actually all of our improvisations at the piano, we play the piano together, and they would just be so playful, and he would smile and he would light up, and, you know, and there would be so much play, and, you know, we'd be playing and gradually speeding up and speeding up and speeding up until we're like going as fast as we can, and then it'd be like, right, who's going to stop this? Who's going to like bring this to an end. And that was also playful. And I think, you know, that feels like, you know, it was almost like playing a game of like cat and mouse or something, like you're chasing each other and you're like, okay, who's going to break this circle? And so that felt like really free play almost, that, you know, might be more, you might see more outside of maybe music with younger children, but we were able to do it in the music. And that felt significant because it was like, I showed an extract of the work to his, one of the members of staff, and they were like, it's like he's a child again. And I was like, well, he is a child, because he would have been, I don't know, about 12 maybe.
Yeah, that's very much a child.
Yeah, as a child. But you know, like we probably talk about someone who's 12 as maybe coming into adolescence.
Yeah, they're kind of
the borderline, aren't they? And you know, it just felt really significant that she was like, oh, he's like a child again.
Yeah.
And I've gone off on one, but
no, it's really nice to hear like an example of.
Yeah, because I think that's why I started maybe first thinking of play with my experiences with this young person, and then thinking more broadly, like, okay, why is this so significant, and why can I do it in music?
It's also, I find, as the music therapist, when you're interacting like that, because you're involved in the play, I have a great time. And I can come away from a session and just be like, that was so fun, because it's a joint thing. And I think that your point to it being, like with the teenagers that we work with, they've got that self-consciousness, they've got that potential trauma that they've experienced, and they're quite in like fixed states, and they struggle to get into that flow and play. And music has this brilliant ability to bring them into play without sort of infantilizing them or making it a situation that feels totally uncomfortable, because music is naturally playful. It's part of music, especially improvisation. And so it enables the young people to engage in play without knowing that they're engaging in play.
Yeah. And I think on a zoomed out level, this really speaks to the importance of creativity being available to across the board, but particularly once kind of kids are hitting that like high school, teenage years, when play starts to look different. Everything that you guys have just described it's such a beautiful example of how engaging in creativity facilitates that. I wonder, do you think, I guess the way that I've seen maybe more of a play state being reached, which is kind of what you described, is like by being playful. That sounds so obvious, but sometimes I'll like just do a little thing that was like, you know, if you're sat at a piano, you like do something that was a bit like of a surprise or a bit out there, or that sounds bad, like on the surface, it's like you kind of make a mistake on purpose, or you do something that was like, and you kind of feel a little part of whoever you're with relax, because they're like, oh, you were a bit silly. That kind of gives me permission. That tells me that maybe I could risk it and see what happens. I think, do you want to like chat a bit about what Paul? Nobody knows who Paul is. It doesn't matter. Because I think that's really important.
Before that, just onto what you were saying, if you do something silly like that and a little bit unexpected, my question to you is: does play have to involve people? So, as in, you can't just to reach a state of play. Does it have to be social? Because if you just did a little bloop and you were like, that's so funny to myself, it's not. Is it play, or does it have to be? It's a relational thing, and playing as children, it's relational between the child and the child, or the parent and the child. But then, if a child's playing on their own, I guess they can be in a state of play. But is that a different experience? I don't know. That just got me thinking, like, that a lot of the play, well, because we're therapists working with clients, it has to be relational.
I think creating is, in its most healthy moments, creating is playful. Like, I think it is play, or at least has elements of play, and you can be making something on your own, and the spirit that you approach that in is play, and you're just, it's an experiment.
Yeah.
I think that's a word, I keep thinking of the word experiment when we're
Yeah.
talking. It's kind of like, I'm just going to see what happens if I do this. And
There's an
not
element
worrying
of
about what
spontaneity.
happens. Yes, yes.
That's the key, isn't it?
And because that, it feels like the thing that when something has interrupted life course, so there's like mental health challenges, it feels like the spontaneity.
Yes.
And probably a release of control is the thing that feels challenging for people.
Yeah.
So I think you can do it on your own, but it feels different. There's a whole new layer and version of play that you can reach when it is interactive. I'm not sure if you get the fullness of it when you're on your own.
That's interesting. Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head there with the the unpredictability or the spontaneity of not exactly knowing how it's going to turn out. And at the hospital school where we both work, well, we all work under the same hospital school, don't we, with the teenagers. I was chatting to the mental health lead there, and he was saying that he thinks that's a fundamental thing that music therapy offers for these young people, is that so many of them have gone through trauma or like prolonged poor mental health that has stopped them from being able to engage with their child ego state and like their free child, which is so important for like development of self, and that music therapy just brings them back to do that in a safe way. And he was just saying that was the crux of what he thinks that the work that we do is, which is really interesting from his psychological perspective.
This is going to get a bit niche for a second, but don't you find it so interesting? Because within the Nordhoff Robbins approach to music therapy, which is the one that we all practice, when you learn it, you talk about the music child and that existing in everyone. And I think we're cautious about using that phrase because it sounds a bit weird.
Yeah.
And so as soon as you said, like, what did you say? Free child?
Yeah, that's what Paul referred to it as, was like the free child state. And the three words he used that enable you to get to that are spontaneity, creativity, and play.
Whoa, that's literally what you just said, Lou.
That's
it's really
so
interesting.
Fun.
Yeah, it is so fun. But you're so right in that we keep coming back to the child, and we're saying that the entire approach that we have is based on trying to connect with people's music child, but naturally, a child state needs play. So of course, it's a fundamental part of what we do.
Yeah,
which is really interesting.
So I guess we're saying, and I think like the literature would also say, that play is not, it is built into us. It is a natural thing. Like, given the opportunity, kids will play.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of like culturally what's happening in terms of like screens and inside and like all those things that are reducing or changing what play looks like.
But innately,
like, if we're saying like innately kids are made to do that, and so maybe we keep coming back to it because that is it in its purest state. Like a kid naturally playing, not because anyone's told them to, not because anyone's asked them to, but they're just being. Like a kid just being is play. Because it's free, when it's free from all of the complexities of even awareness of like what people around them are thinking, or like expectations of what they should or shouldn't do. And so incorporating that, I think, because creating can wrap meaning, so engaging in creative arts can wrap meaning around any way of being. Maybe that's what part of what makes it a safe place to rediscover that or to take those risks, because you can do something and the music or whatever art form it is will make meaning of it, because it makes sense, because you're just contributing to, in our case, the music that's happening. So nothing you do is wrong, and I guess that's a lot of what we're trying to create in our therapeutic environment. It's like you can't play it wrong. There's no way of doing this wrong. Creating that space where the music, or I guess other art forms, I just can't speak as fluently about them.
Yeah.
Creates a space where you can do that and maybe take a little risk and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It is really cool. On the flip side,
yeah,
I think in its like most natural form, like you say, I agree with that. But I think the challenge that we face in our work is that there is an expectation on how to play certain instruments, or an expectation of the music. And so we come up against that all of the time. And it's almost like if there could be a scenario where, I don't know, but you like, say, for example, at the hospital school, I've got a drum kit, I've got bass guitar, electric guitar, keys, and loads of the teenagers have been exposed to how that should be played. And so like that's a challenge I find in our practice to try and sort of debug that belief that it has to be played that way.
I think that speaks to what you briefly touched on earlier, Lou, about like how, you know, some forms of like creativity cannot be play.
Yeah.
And so that kind of like those expectations or those pressures that we put on ourselves to engage in creativity in certain ways makes it not playful. And, you know, we have expectations of, this looks like a band setup, therefore we must be a band. Oh, I have to learn how to play this instrument properly. And then that gets in the way. Then you're not playing for play's sake.
Yeah, that's just totally reminded me of when I used to practice music when I was younger. I used to like split it in my head and be like, well, I'm going to do the practice and then I'm going to play. And I would like consciously be like, and now I'm just going to play for the sake of playing. Yeah. And now looking back, that was me doing something because it made me feel good. Yeah. The practice was like, fine, it was to tick a box, it was to pass an exam. And then I'd stop that bit and be like, now let's just see what's going to happen. And that's the bit that made me that's the bit that made me be like, oh, there's something in this. Like, why do I feel like this? Why does this make me feel so good? And yeah, probably is where I first started thinking about music for health and things like that. Because I just did it naturally in my own practice.
That makes total sense, because the one version of playing was what you had to do, as was dictated to you or directed by your teacher, who would approve or disapprove of how much practice you had done and let you know about that based on how you play. And then the other was self-directed and you were not doing it for any other reason than that you wanted to play.
Yeah. And I'd just be like, I remember I'd go, I'm just going to start. And you just start and then you go. And that's, so it's the not being directed, and it's also this unpredictability and spontaneity and the flow that made that feel playful. And I've answered my previous question in that you can play on your own.
Yes, you have. Good, great conclusions. Yeah. But even the language you use is different, because it's like, I'm going to practice now, I'm going to play now. Yeah. And I know you mean play in a different way than playing that we're talking about. But it is interesting to me that it's like, I'm practicing, I'm playing. But it's funny how something that can be playful can so easily become something that isn't, because of the external expectations.
Yeah. I find it something that I have to balance in my practice with the teenagers, because a lot of them come in wanting to learn an instrument. And I'm not a music teacher, I'm a music therapist, but I have to honour the fact that that's where their motivation lies and that's where their interests lie, and I need to go with that. So I find in my practice I'm constantly finding that balance between getting into a state of working on something so that they can feel like they're developing tools that actually are then being used so we can get into that play state, rather than it being so you can play a scale or that you can do this. I'm often giving, through being more directive, the tools for them to then be able to play. But as I'm talking, it's interesting that, isn't it? Because is that the expectation? Because they could just play, but it might not sound right. So it's play. We in the work we're doing play, but it is still within a structure that's often musically cohesive.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Because I think, whilst like I would not define learning a pattern or a chord progression or whatever, I wouldn't necessarily refer to that as play. I think sometimes, is it fair to say that technical ability, technical skill can limit the places you can go within play? And so sometimes sometimes I feel like I want to be able to play in a different way or do something different in order to expand how I can participate in play.
Yeah.
And I guess it's the same with like expression. So you can express yourself through music, but the more ways you have of playing and the more technical skill you have, the more expressive you can be because you have more tools at your disposal. Like,
yeah, exactly.
If you were doing DIY, like you can do a certain amount of things with just a drill, but there is a limit to what you can build if all you have is a drill. Like you, at some point, you have to expand the tools that you have. Now, I'm not saying that we can't, in a therapy session, I'm not saying in music therapy that you can only get so far without that person having skills, but I'm thinking in a broader context. And maybe in part with some of the young people that we work with, because they're very cognitively aware and they can articulate, oh, I want to go here, I want to do that. Maybe there is a part to this where it's like, oh no, okay, like we're going to kind of pause this, and then so that we can expand the places that you can go in play.
Yeah, that's what I was touching on, is that I feel exactly that, and that in my sessions we're in that stage of like developing skill on the instrument in order to expand the possibilities of where we could go. And then I find there's like one particular young person that I work with, and they're like learning the drums or exploring the drums, and they'll get a new pattern that I've shown them, and then I just wait for that moment where they do something slightly different, or they do something a little bit unpredictable or a little bit spontaneous, or they try something new. And that's the moment that I go, right, I'm joining in with you now. We're going to improvise, and we're going to go, and we're just going to play from that moment of sort of building skill. So I feel like that's so much in my work, is that sort of balance between the two. But I do wonder if that comes down to expectation of certain instruments and expectation of certain musical worlds, whereas actually you don't have to have a certain level of skill to experience the full level of like imaginative play. But with art, especially with young people, they're not just going to like play the like air guitar or like the air drum. It's not going to be. They need that. They need the tools.
I think some of it is like the self-consciousness that we touch on, like a lot of teenagers especially have, is that that it all weaves in with the expectations of what the instrument's supposed to do, what the music's supposed to sound like, and that self-consciousness, and maybe to feel safe to be free in their playing, they have to feel like they have some skills, some competence, they can fully go there.
I do find what is interesting is like is that sometimes my most playful moments within music therapy have been when I've played an instrument in a way that it's not supposed to be played.
Yes.
So like I'll be playing on the piano and all of a sudden like we'll just start hitting the piano like it's a drum, and that's hilarious because it's like unexpected. And so there's something in like the role of the instruments in like how that impacts play in this.
Yeah. If you play the instrument in the wrong way, I was thinking of examples where I've just like bashed my arm on the piano, and like that's kind of been like a switch, and then it's like, oh, we can do this, all right, let's go. But if you're in a group and there's one of you facilitating, that modelling almost is so much harder to do because there's so many more people and so many more relationship dynamics to figure out.
It is so much about your relationship with the people that you're wanting to play with.
Yeah. And I wonder whether we often find it so difficult in our settings is because again come back to that safety and that relationships, and a lot of the young people that we've worked with have experienced trauma or severe challenges to their mental health, and that gets in the way of their ability to build relationships with others, build a sense of trust, build a sense of themselves. And so that can be the barrier to play. Yeah. And maybe, learning an instrument first so that they feel safe is like a way that we've experienced. Overcoming that. Not trying to reduce it down. I know that can be really reductionist, but
this might be too big for us to get into right now. But so because of our current work, we've talked a lot about a barrier to play being the need for too much structure. So that play for a lot of the young people we work with is becoming more comfortable with less structure and being able to just experiment and be spontaneous. Through this conversation, it's made me think of a client who I've not thought of for a long time, who I worked with in a adult rehab mental health ward. He had multiple personality disorder, and his awareness of his impact on other people in the room was pretty non-existent. His energy was very high. Like he would just like run into the room, do a handstand on the table and run out again. Or like run in, loudly say, like tell some jokes and then leave again. And it was quite, depending on the day, could be really disruptive. And working with him, on the days where he was the least structured, I would say that we still struggled. We struggled to get into any sort of flow within his playful state, because he was extremely playful, but he was not able to structure himself and organize himself enough to maybe for him there was an element of play in the music that he would play, but he was not able to structure himself or organize himself enough for anybody else to exist there with him. And a lot of the work that I did with him was trying to almost narrow what he would do so that we could work together. And so is there like a sweet spot in the middle? Because I'm thinking about when kids play, there is a degree of negotiation. There is a degree of like, we've set this world up for ourselves. Like, like playing mums and dads is a really typical space. But there is an agreement. So I was watching my little boy play with a couple of friends the other day, and the other two are siblings, and the younger brother, they kind of decided Ezra's going to be the dad, this girl was going to be the mum. They're like the older ones, it was like a natural role for them to be, and then they just like pointed at the other lad and said, "You're going to be the brother." And he was like, "I don't want to be the brother." And then we kind of like watched them unfold this negotiation around roles. And when kids do that, there is an agreement. They're like, there's specific roles, and like, or like, you have committed to be the donkey. It doesn't matter if your knees hurt from crawling around anymore. Like, you are the donkey, and so that's how you have to move for the duration of the game. Like, there's agreements that are made.
Yeah.
And so there is, like, we've talked about it as being free and being spontaneous, being open, but there also, I think, in play, there is a degree of structure and boundaries and agreements that are made in order for play to exist in a way that means everyone can do that together. Like, I don't want to leave this conversation with just like, oh, play equals complete freedom and no structure and no boundaries in creativity.
I think, sorry, just jumping on that real quick. I think the creative mediums offer inherent structure and boundaries. Like music, there are sounds that are created, and that, you know, to make music, I would say you have to make some sound. I know not all musicians would agree with that, but you know, at the piano, it has to make a sound. It doesn't matter whether you hit the keys or you hit the actual wood of the piano or whatever.
Yeah,
you make a sound, and then those structures you negotiate through different means with the people that you're working with, and you kind of, you know, like turn taking. That's the main, like, that's one big one that comes up. Like, that is a structure, and we don't set out to establish it, but it just sort of, I play, you play, I play, and you know, it's just like an organic structure, but it is a, you know, a inherent way of making music with people. It's turn taking, or, you know, art. Something has to make a mark on something else, maybe, if you're doing visual art. Or dance. Body has to move, or something, you know.
There was a fly on the cake.
I thought you were just acting out what she was talking about. Dance.
But like, I feel like it's none of the, you know, we say that it's free, but it's not. They're not free, because for it to be that medium, there is something that has to happen.
There's still a container.
There's a container naturally when there is a creative form there. I'm thinking about what you've just said, because I can really relate to that experience when I used to work on a psychiatric ward, and I'm wondering if our perception of play, but what is actually happening internally. So like, when someone is in a manic episode, they might be perceived to be being very playful, but actually it might, I don't know.
So they're like mimicking play behaviours.
But it's not actually, they're not experiencing the flow or the fun or the, it's like they're not well. I don't know enough about this topic, but I just wonder if it's actually perceived play as opposed to actual play.
Yeah, that
and
makes
that's quite interesting, and how music can bring people who are in what is perceived to be playful, but maybe isn't, because it's not positive or like constructive in any way. And you can start to relate to what they're doing musically and start to sort of mirror back to them how they're presenting in a way that is playful, that can potentially bring them from that state of perceived play into a state of actual play. I don't know enough about this topic, but that just, I can think of a client that I work with who was like in a real manic episode, and like, if you were to just look at them and not know their circumstance and not see them in an establishment like an intensive care psychiatric unit, that you would just think they were having a really fun time, but they actually were very poorly, and it was this perceived state of play. And that my way of engaging with them was to improvise to their presentation, to bring them to an awareness of what I was doing in relation to them. And then we were able to get into what I deemed to be a state of play, because it was relational. But it is something that we negotiate in, like, that needed me to have structure. in order to bring some kind of predictability from them within, we could explore and play. And I work at a homeless shelter at the moment, and I have a group, and I have some people who are so willing to play, and actually sometimes I don't know if that's a healthy way of play. I don't know if, like, because a lot of them do struggle with their mental health and do have challenges that might make them be a little bit more boisterous and a little bit more perceived playful. And then some people who are so afraid of letting go in any capacity, and then you put them in the same situation, and it's your role to try and balance flexibility and play and structure to meet in the middle. So I do think it is a balance.
So maybe then it's the approach that you come into play, but that maybe defines what it is. Because in some of those situations, and just, you know, in life, I think some people use like playfulness as a defense mechanism. As like
but that's not fun.
No, like I have a family member who does like it just turns everything into a joke. Like it's impossible to engage with him in like beyond a certain level because everything becomes a joke. But that's not.
It's not the same, is it?
No, that isn't play, because that's fueled by whatever's going on in him. That's feels like he can't connect. So then, but then I suppose that's the difference between external motive and intrinsic motive. And I feel like I read something about that, and that's really helpful. But I feel like I read something about that and like play requiring it to be intrinsic. Whereas sometimes when it's used as like defense, or it's used in a different way,
or it can't be helped.
It's
so in
it's
that
not,
it's
not coming from
I want to play. That's really interesting.
I feel like we could probably talk for another 20 minutes.
Yeah, I was just thinking we should probably have some wrapping up. Any final thoughts? Because it's a big topic, isn't it? Play is a huge topic.
It's bigger than I thought.
Yeah, there's so much.
That's really
and
interesting.
you know, play therapists, if anyone's listening, hit us up, because we would love to chat more.
I genuinely, like, after this conversation, I would love to talk to a play therapist. I'd say our headlines are: play is really important. Creative engagement is a very beautiful and helpful way to engage in play, especially as we leave early childhood and into adolescence and beyond. And I'm definitely going to be more conscious of it in my work.
I want to read more about it. I'm inspired.
Maybe, is there any music stuff on it? We should find out.
There will be, I'm sure.
All right.
Cool.
Cake.
Cake.